The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Let's go! What's that? Gator! It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome. After a 1-week absence, the Football to the Max podcast is back, and it's it's nice to have this thing back. Whatever Gary you just sent me says unavailable. So,
man, you should be excited when it comes to unavailable because that was unavailable all week last week.
Yes, Gary was unavailable, so that made it to where we could not do the show last week. It's kind of hard to do one of these things by yourself, and tell you, this is the first time I think we've had one Mike Mitchell on for the entire program, as Randy is still on his sabbatical. No idea on when we'll have him back, but hopefully we do. But we do have his partner in crime for the fantasy podcast on here. So how are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And a combination of a hurricane in one corner of the country followed by a cyclone in the other corner of the country, and cruises and broken computers and Skype issues. It's good to have us all back together in one way or another.
Amen to that. I mean, it just seems like we've had a crazy week last week, but the continuity is back in full, and I am ready to get this thing going.
Yeah, so we finally can talk about games here, and we shall do that right now by talking about this Monday night game that really there wasn't much to this, as the New York Jets just got trounced on by the Arizona Cardinals. A pretty putrid offering by the Jets here on this evening, and the Cardinals kind of ran away with it, as you sort of... Brandon Marshall had talked about during the week about they shouldn't be panicking, none of this, and here comes, and Brandon Marshall is probably the only decent thing to come out of the Jets at all. They're now 1-5. Carson Palmer was okay, but this was all David Johnson today.
Yes, it was. And, it's been, kind of an up and down roller coaster for the Arizona Cardinals. And David Johnson has been a guy that people have been really high on, and he definitely proved it, this evening. And I'm excited for him once again. I mean, he came into this season with a lot of expectations, and he met some of them tonight.
Yeah, what surprised me about this game was that once again the Jets didn't run the ball. I don't understand why they don't run the ball. They have Matt Forte. They gave him a big contract. They have a quality backup in Bilal Powell. Forte had 9 carries. Bilal Powell had 3 carries. I understand they were trailing, but it was only 14-3 at the half. So that doesn't mean you just abandon the run and put it on Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has not been able to carry the team at all. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why they keep getting away from the running game when that is their MO. They are a run-first team. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not a come-from-behind quarterback, as he's proven 5 out of 6 games this year. And it just doesn't make sense to me. And I would be shocked if there's not a coaching change within the next couple weeks, because this team is in a toilet bowl spiral right now. And I understand that schedule was rough, but you can't make excuses for this team anymore. And their excuses are done with.
I don't know that that's Todd Bowles' fault, though. I mean, like, I don't think the head coach is the problem here. Maybe you pull a Rex Ryan, fire Shanghaly. I don't know. I mean, I know Shanghaly has cachet. He has a big name, but obviously, whatever worked last year with Fitzpatrick didn't work this year. Maybe you fire. I know Todd Bowles is supposed to be the defensive guy, but if he has a defensive coordinator, maybe you bring somebody else in to give Todd Bowles some fresh ideas, because this is not the same defense as last year. Obviously, Darrelle Revis not being the same guy and not being able to stop people the same way he's done for years hurts. But the rest of this defense is not really doing a whole lot either. And that's a problem, because that's what the Jets have kind of hung their hat on is, okay, we defend well, so you're not scoring a lot of points against us, and we have a dynamic offense with a running game and some great receivers. Well, Eric Decker goes down, that hurts them, and Anua is fine. He's been good for what you get out of him, but it's like Brandon Marshall, Anua when he's effective, and then that's it, and that's a problem. That also goes to a personnel kind of thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. And, the thing with the whole coaching situation, yes, it can be fixed at times. You can make a switch, and it does work. But that is not let's be honest, a thing that's going to work every time. And I think that they try to make him move a quarterback here, and they try to do a few things to maybe change things up in this game just to see what they could get out of these guys. Geno Smith, we all know his limitations. We all know some of his strengths, but at the same time, there's a reason Fitzpatrick has been starting all these games. And so I just don't know. I think this team is lost right now. I think that they came into this season really feeling good about themselves, feeling like they had a better chance with the additions of Matt Forte and other weapons that they've kind of added, but they're not using them to their full ability, and they're in a situation right now where another loss, and they might as well start Geno Smith, start some of these younger guys, because their season is going to be done.
Yeah, time of possession 36-24. That just screams that we didn't run the ball enough. And let's face it, you have a Matt Forte. Use him. I don't understand why they're not using him. Similar to why the Ravens fired their OC last week, because Flacco wasn't throwing the ball down the field at all. And it's a similar situation here with the Jets. You're not playing to your strengths. You're putting the defense on the field too much. Granted, the defense has struggled far more than they expected, but when you're allowing the other team to possess the ball for 36 minutes, it usually means that you're not running the ball enough, for one, which is clearly the case and has been the case for weeks now.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. It's almost like that they have some of the Dolphins coaches over there, because that's what they did to Lamar Miller last year in Miami. They just didn't run the guy, and now look at him. Houston looks great.
At least this week for sure.
Well, this week for sure, yeah. The other weeks, but they've had some tough competition.
Oh, I mean, anybody's going to look great against the Indianapolis Colts defense. So,
yeah.
We should probably take that for what it's worth there. And since we already started talking about it, we might as well get there. Indianapolis was winning this game pretty 13-3 at the end of the half. They were still up 13-9 in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, Brock Osweiler finally comes alive, throws 2 touchdowns in the matter of like 4 minutes. Lamar Miller had been a beast for the entire game, got a yard shy of 150 yards on the day. And then Houston wins it in overtime thanks to some defense sacking Andrew Luck on their try, and Texans win it with a field goal. I mean, you couldn't really ask for more from the Texans, who were down by that much. It's the first time since 2011 Tim Tebow getting was the last guy to do this against the 2011 Dolphins, come back from a 14-point deficit in the final 30 minutes of a game. So you got to give him props for that. Obviously, no J.J. Watt, so that affects on the defensive side. What do you take out of this here for Houston?
Houston is a team that, has been kind of scrappy. They're not perfect this year. I think I kind of had them being one of the hotter teams coming into the season when it comes to at least this conference. I really felt like that they had some, great chances to be great. Now, Brock Osweiler has been the Achilles heel. He has at times. We know that, this guy's been paid a lot of money to come in here and prove a lot. This defense was what I was pointing to that was going to carry this team. It wasn't Brock Osweiler. It was this defense. But the defense, J.J. Watt's injury and a few other things has really made this defense not as great as it's supposed to be. If you ask me, they're kind of lucky to be 4-2. But at the same time, Indianapolis has kind of let you to see that they have plenty of holes as well. So I think both these teams, you saw what you pretty much are going to get out of both of them. Indianapolis is going to give up lots of points at times. They're going to give up at the end of the games. And I feel like Houston, they're going to have to keep close in games if they're going to try to even get close to winning a game, because Brock Osweiler usually doesn't do what he did in this game. This was kind of a shock to see Brock Osweiler look like he was John Elway and make a comeback like that.
The Colts absolutely blew this game. That's what happened. They blew it. They went into the prevent defense late, and even Osweiler can pick apart a prevent defense. They gave up just wide open pass after wide open pass in those last 3 minutes, and they didn't put any pressure on Osweiler. He was able to sit back there and pick them apart, which is easy to do when you're giving up the first 15 yards of any pass. And then on top of it, Indianapolis went into a complete shell. They didn't try anything creative late in the game to maintain possession, get a first down or two, and burn out the clock. It literally was a choke job by the Colts, and I was really disappointed. I actually picked Indianapolis to win this game, and they flat out blew it. To give up 2 long touchdown drives to Osweiler in the last 3 minutes of a game is unacceptable to me, and I am really disappointed. I mean, I understand the defense is beat up, and I understand that Houston has a good defense. Even without Watt, they're still probably an above average defense. But to allow what happened to them late in that game was just an atrocity.
Yeah, they don't seem to be mentally tough. That's the one thing about Indianapolis, and that defense has been, let's be honest, for a long time has been their problem, and why they haven't won more games. And once again, you get the same situation, just a different day. So I feel for Indianapolis Colts fans right now. I mean, they get close to winning these games, and at the end, they just don't pull it off. The same thing happened to them in London. It just. They get so close, but no cookie. And Denver as well. They hung in there with Denver for a while, and they just couldn't pull off the victory.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know that. I think you obviously have to have a better feeling about Osweiler after this game, but again, we have to put out the caveat that it is the Indianapolis Colts defense. He did what you needed him to do, but he did not look good in that first half at all.
He didn't look good for 3 3/4 of the game. He looked good for the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. That was it. And I have serious issues with Houston going forward. I mean, because they're in such a weak division, I can see them winning that division, because there's nobody else in that division that really stands out. The Colts have huge holes. Jacksonville has huge holes. Tennessee has huge holes. They could win that division by default. 9-7 will probably win that division, to be honest. And it could be any one of those teams that ends up coming out of it, just because all those teams are so balanced. Had Indianapolis have held on to this game, there would be a half game difference between first and last place. That's how tight this division is. And it's just because it's a slew of mediocre teams. But, kudos to Lamar Miller. He showed up. He ran great. He had some just tremendous plays in that game, even against a banged-up defense. If they can get that out of him going forward, it'll take a lot of pressure off of Osweiler.
Yeah, I agree. And, I know you guys were saying, this is the Indianapolis' defense. That's why Lamar Miller looks good. I still believe in the guy. I think Lamar Miller is a great running back. He hasn't had the opportunities that he needs to when it comes to the running game, only because I feel like that Brock Osweiler has not taken the pressure off him. I think teams are kind of loading up. They know, hey, if we can kind of stop Lamar Miller here and stifle him, Brock Osweiler probably won't beat us if we have a halfway decent defense. So I think that's what teams are looking at. And I think Lamar Miller will just get better as time goes on if this team allows him to.
Yeah, so we move on to a game that probably shouldn't have been this close if you're looking at it from the perspective of the Seattle Seahawks had dominated this game for a half, start of a third quarter, and then they allow the Falcons to score 21 unanswered points. The Seahawks are able to get it to 26-24, but it ends on a very questionable call. 4th and 10, Matt Ryan basically throws it up there, and you can clearly see Richard Sherman pull down Julio Jones' arm, and no call is made. What do you guys think? I mean, just a totally clearly blown call, and Dan Quinn goes nuts on the sideline.
Yeah, you can't blame Dan Quinn. That was very blatant. But, you got to go with the referee. I mean, this is the way this game works, and it's not fair. To me, at times, I kind of feel like you should have the right to pull a challenge flag out if you really feel like it's blatant. I get why they don't do that. It bugs the crap out of me because of things like this. So at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about it. But I really feel like that was what happened, and that's exactly why Atlanta did not find a way to win this game. I think that they should have had a first down for sure and had more opportunities. But that's the way this game kind of worked out in the end, and Atlanta at least made a comeback, and at least they had some strengths shown in this game. I really wasn't sure how I was feeling in this game because of the fact that I really still feel like Seattle's got a pretty dominant defense. And really, Atlanta's really surprised me with their offense. So I thought we would get a good clash here. And at the end of the day, that's what happened. It came down to the wire. Not really surprising for me on that point.
Can I rant for just a moment?
Do it.
All right. Well, I'll start out by saying there was a hands to the face by Julio Jones on that same play to Richard Sherman at the beginning of the play when he left the line. Sherman tried to bump him and had his hands up around his chest, and Julio's hands were clearly in Sherman's face mask. So there is that. So maybe you make a call of offsetting penalties there. If you're going to call it one way, you got to call it both ways. But yes, there was a pass interference. However, if you notice, pass interference doesn't get called very often if a defender grabs the arms. It's when they grab the jersey or the body or run into a player that it's usually called.
Yeah, but he completely disallowed him from being able to catch the ball. I think
Absolutely.
That was more one of those situations where the and this is one thing I cannot stand, and they made a big point of this during many of the games as well, of you cannot be inconsistent. Stop doing this bull crap about, it's the fourth quarter, now we got to let everybody play. That works in basketball. That doesn't work in football. In basketball, yeah, you do have calls that decide games or whatever, but calling ticky-tack fouls in the first quarter and not deciding to call them in the fourth quarter, that's not a really big deal. When you have, in football, when you have a play like that clearly Atlanta still has some work to do, it's not like they could just kick the field goal from right there. You need to give them that opportunity knowing that the foul was made. You make that call, and you stop doing this thing of, okay, well, in the first quarter we're going to call these pass interferences, but in the fourth quarter we're not. You can't do that. It's a pass interference or pass interference.
Well, that touches on my rant, which my rant was going to be, I watched that Arizona and New York game tonight, and there was a sequence of 4 consecutive plays that had flags. There was 19 accepted penalties between those two teams tonight. In the third quarter, there seemed like there was laundry on the carpet almost every single play. It was ridiculous. And then in the fourth quarter, there was maybe one penalty called the whole fourth quarter. So I agree they're so important to them because their image right now is we don't know what a catch is, and pass interference only gets called when we feel like it.
Yeah, that's bad. But I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to say on that, Gary. But
No, I agree. The NFL has a major issue with a lot of things that they shouldn't have issues with, and then they don't have any issue with things they should have issues with. I completely agree. They let things like this happen, bad penalties. They let some of these referees get away with calling sloppy games, and then teams like the Dallas Cowboys aren't allowed to put police logos on their jerseys to celebrate the deaths of some brave officers. Is because we don't want that. We don't want well, you're setting yourself up for all this bad.
You don't want controversy, but now you're showing the national anthem every single game to see who sits down.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
And you can wear pink for an entire month, and it's for a great cause. But why can't you do any other causes?
Because the NFL doesn't get any money out of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, it's ridiculous. But we could go on a rant and rave on that just alone.
I do want to give credit to Seattle for, their defense being what it was in those first two quarters. And Russell Wilson actually had a good game. You just don't see it in the stat sheet. And, credit to the Falcons as well for coming back and everything else. It was just a really good game by the end. Just kind of sucks that it ended the way it did. Like, if they had got the opportunity and then the Falcons just don't make the field goal, okay, I feel much differently about this game. But it sucks that, that sour taste gets left in there. That's the way it ended.
The Seahawks defense collapsed in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Those plays that Atlanta hit on them were huge blown coverage plays where guys were running down the field by themselves.
But wasn't Kim Chancellor not playing at that point? They had a
be that as it may, you can't just leave guys uncovered. There was literally two separate plays where guys were left uncovered. Julio Jones was left uncovered on one play. How do you leave that guy uncovered?
I don't know, but it happened on that one. The Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs, came into Oakland and took care of the Oakland Raiders, who will soon be the Las Vegas Raiders, and in probably a couple of years it has now been officially approved by the Congress over there in Las Vegas for the funding for the stadium. So, sorry Oakland, but you will be losing your team at some point. Well, obviously, the owners still have to vote on it, but we'll see how that goes. And right now, apparently, it's like everybody against the Raiders moving because having a problem with Las Vegas at this point. But we'll see how that goes. Spencer Ware had a big day with 131 yards and a touchdown. Jamal Charles got a touchdown. Amari Cooper had a nice day. And it was basically the Chiefs' defense just deciding that thou shalt not pass on this one.
Yeah, and this is the Kansas City defense that you kind of thought it was going to be. But they haven't been perfect this year. And I think really this boils down to a division game. Both these teams had a good first half, really, getting on the scoreboard for the first two touchdowns for each team, or first touchdown for each of them actually in the first quarter. And then you move on and they trade field goals and they just, slug it out. But in that second half, it's all about Kansas City, and Kansas City pretty much dominated and got them the victory. And I think this Kansas City team is still hanging around, and they're a team that, showcase that, hey, we are still, relevant. Let's be honest, because lately we haven't really felt that they were so relevant. But Oakland still, man, I look at them as a team that I had highly rated. I really felt like they could win this whole division. And right now they still look like they're a young, growing team, and the growing pains are showing.
Yeah, and that defense, that defensive coordinator might find himself out the door pretty soon.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was supposed to be one of the things that everybody was going to be talking about and all we're talking about is how much that defense cannot stop anyone. Do they even know what defense is over there in Oakland?
Well, part of it is because they have a lot of new pieces and they're young, so maybe we can give them the gel excuse and wait on that just a hair longer. But to this point, they have been atrocious on defense, and unless they fix that, they can't be considered a legitimate challenger in the AFC because you're not going to stop teams like New England who are going to find your weaknesses and exploit them routinely. And I think New England is the bar that everyone has to be measured against at this point in the AFC, especially with some of the transgressions that took place over this weekend. And I would see New England hanging up 45 on them easily at this point, just with the pieces they have and the coaching they have. And yeah, Oakland has built an offense that can compete. It's an upper echelon offense now. Derek Carr is certainly proving himself to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league, if not a top 10 quarterback at this point. But that defense is in the bottom third at best, and it's got to be fixed if they're going to be a serious contender.
Yeah, it does, and what this also does is it keeps the Broncos in first place because the Chiefs beat them. And I think this was an important win for the Chiefs because it keeps everybody kind of tight in the division instead of the Raiders kind of having games up on them and being 5-2. So this was a good win to kind of keep things close, and we'll.
Just to hit on Kansas City really quick, it was interesting that Spencer Ware had 26 touches and Jamal Charles only had 11 touches in this game. And it makes you wonder, maybe Jamal Charles isn't going to get the reins in Kansas City going forward.
Yeah, and you're right, and it's a smart move if you ask me on their part because Jamal Charles is older, and he's more expensive, and Ware could be the future. So they've got to do it now. And hey, why? Think about this: you're going to be paying Charles even the same amount of money if he's on the bench, and why not just let him sit there without being injured? Let Ware show you what he can do.
I mean, that is true. It's that whole. It's very similar to a situation, we're having to deal with in Dallas right now of what do you do. I mean, it's always a help that you do have a Charles there in case something does happen to Ware. But, I mean, Spencer Ware is kind of the hot hand right now. You don't have to put Charles out there to do all the work he used to. The offense doesn't really revolve around him as much as it did when he was healthy, so...
And really quickly, I got to ask this question: Charles, trade deadline's coming up. Would you think about that if you were Kansas City? Maybe saying, "Hey, Charles is up for grabs."
Depending on what they can get.
City.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what someone will offer for him. I mean, I found out that a team was willing to trade a first-round pick for Sam Bradford, which has actually turned out relatively good, but at the time of that trade, it seemed ridiculous. But
yeah,
with Jamal Charles's track record, if you can get some sort of quality in return, why not? I mean, I think Charkandrick West has established himself as a decent backup. I think Spencer Ware, aside from some fumbling issues, is definitely a running back that you can move forward with, and he's even decent out of the backfield too. So, they're not hurting there. I just wonder if Jamal Charles, we don't know the details, or at least I don't, on his contract, but maybe he has some incentives that are in that contract that the Chiefs are trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
That could be a thing as well. Always got to know about those contracts that not a lot of people always think about when we're just sitting here talking about stuff. But yeah, it's we'll have to see how this goes going forward. And it's also just the Chiefs have done well without him these past years, so it's just like, okay, well, let's trade him and see what we can get. Anybody that's really looking for a running back at this point, and Jamal Charles still has that name. Speaking of the Patriots, they rolled once again, defeating the Bengals 35-17, a total of 25 points in the last two quarters to just totally just take this game and put it away. Tom Brady, freaking 29 of 35, 376 yards and 3 touchdowns. That dude, who cares if he misses a month? He's just right on it again. Once again, LeGarrette Blount suffers because we get the passing attack, and Gronk seems to be kind of back to himself. A nasty hit by Vontaze Burfict on Martellus Bennett, and once again, Burfict the talk of suspension, thanks to him doing something stupid.
Yeah, and this guy is. I don't know what to say about him because I get he's passionate. He loves, getting out there and running his mouth. But when you put other player safety in the that danger zone, that's not a good idea. And not only that, that is going to get you suspended. That's going to get you fined. And I'm just thinking to myself, just be a professional. Play as hard as you want. Be emotional. Do those things, but. Let's not try to hurt people. But, that's just the way he is, and Cincinnati has to deal with that. But, he's part of the issues, I think, when it comes to Cincinnati. They depend on his emotional leadership, apparently, but they need to lean on something else because right now they are not doing it. They're not playing with a team effort. They are a little scattered here, and they find themselves down in games very quickly. And that's completely not the formula that this team has followed in the past. In the past, it's been about defense and let the offense try to catch up with the defense. And this year, that defense is not doing the job. They're not taking care of business. And then we're finding teams like the New England Patriots who are very efficient, especially with their star quarterback. It's, you can get down quick, and they did.
I don't think there's any question as of right this moment that the Patriots are the team to beat in the NFL, in my opinion. Tom Brady just comes back, doesn't miss a beat. It's literally like he was never gone, which I guess we shouldn't be surprised. But here's the scary thing about the Patriots is adding Martellus Bennett gives them the same dynamic they had when they had Aaron Hernandez there with the Gronkowski, and them running two tight end sets gives them so much more leverage for the running game and the passing game. And just what Brady needs is another weapon. I mean, we haven't even heard from Julian Edelman at all this year, really. And he was, he's been their Wes Welker over the last few years. And they don't even need him now. I mean, what are you going to do? You take away Gronk, and then Bennett beats you for 3 touchdowns like last season or last week. This week, you take away Bennett and Edelman, and then Gronk goes off on you. That team is virtually unstoppable, in my opinion, and they are going to be very tough to beat, barring a big injury. As for Vontaze Burfict, he's a thug with a helmet, in my opinion. He's playing in the wrong era. He should have played in the 70s and the 80s when you could target people high or low and get away with it. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it through the season because he literally, when he puts that helmet on, it takes away any brain matter that he might have. Maybe he needs a new helmet. I don't know, but he is going to end up breaking someone's leg or causing a career-ending injury, and he's going to be tossed from the league, and he's not far from it now, but I just hate to see what's going to happen down the road, and it could even happen to my team since we play them again. I don't trust the guy on the field. I really don't.
Yeah, this is just a weird case for Vontaze Burfict. I mean, the dude he was the talk of he became the talk of that entire game after it was over because of that hit and everything. And, I mean, we were still talking about it in the offseason as well, and then here you go and be talking about it again. Not that there's a lot of positive to take out of the Bengals right now, but, it puts them in a light you don't want to be in as a team. That being said, we are going to talk about your team because there's a big injury with Big Ben. He's out anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. He had to shave down the knee or whatever it is that is ailing him right now. And Landry Jones came in, and he played like a quarterback that hasn't played very much. Very young guy. And all of a sudden, Jay Ajayi decided to show up and go over 200 yards. And part of that is also a ridiculous, late game touchdown that really shouldn't have happened. That if you're a fantasy owner of Jay Ajayi, you probably were jumping up and down in your seat that you could not believe this would happen. But Ryan Tannehill, once again, just terrible. but at least the running game got going, and that defense was all over the Steelers' shirt that entire game, even when Big Ben was there.
This game just, the Steelers, for whatever reason, it's inexplicable to me, but they play the absolute worst they can play against terrible competition. And this has been a trend. This isn't something that's just happened this year. This happened last year. It happened the year before, and the year before, and the year before. I got to pin that on Tomlin. For whatever reason, this team does not come into play against teams they should beat. If they won games against teams that they, on paper, should completely destroy, they should have destroyed Miami. I don't care if it's played in Miami. Cleveland should have beat Miami. The Steelers were absolutely brutal after the first quarter. Roethlisberger got hurt, but he didn't get hurt until later in that game. He was only 19 of 34 with 2 picks in that game. He was relatively ineffective the whole game. You've got Antonio Brown. You've got Eli Rogers. What happened to Sammy Coates? He disappeared. He didn't even have a catch in this game. How does Le'Veon Bell only get 10 carries? I mean, none of this makes sense to me. And for the Steelers, good luck next week. You're playing New England with Landry Jones as your starter.
Oof. Talk about let's give the game to New England already.
Yeah. Roethlisberger has a torn meniscus. He's not expected to be out long. Fortunately, after the New England game, they have a bye, so he should be back in a few weeks. But, the way they played this week, their only chance next week is for Le'Veon Bell to get 30 carries and rush for over 200 yards. That's the only chance they have.
Yeah, and, for them to get Bell the ball, they'll probably do a few things a little bit differently because New England's going to be focused on Bell. They're going to be focused on even D'Angelo Williams when he gets his chances. So they're going to have to do whatever they can to switch things up and make it more, friendly for Landry and, of course, those running backs. I feel for, Big Ben because he's, definitely – been the guy there for so long, and it just seems like he can't avoid these injuries. These injuries keep popping up, and it's almost a yearly thing. It's like Tony Romo. He's just guaranteed to miss 2 to 6 games in a year. And this is one of those lucky ones where he's not going to miss very much time. I fully expect him to be back after their bye week. So luckily they only had to probably play 1 game without him. But man, if this team gets the kind of pressure that Miami put on that offense, they are not good, and that's an issue. I think at times the Pittsburgh Steelers offense has definitely aided that defense and given them a little bit more help that they needed. And now without that offense, it's been a big struggle, and it's almost kind of unfair for them to have to go play the New England Patriots this next week, but that's the way things work. And I don't think, you got to be too worried when Big Ben comes back. But right now, you've got to be very concerned.
Just to throw one more thing out there, Sean, sorry, but the defense getting ran on, that was the one thing the Steelers could hang their hats on, even with the secondary that has been questionable for a few seasons now. They at least could depend on their run defense to make stops. Jay Ajayi rushing for 200 yards? Really? He didn't have 200 yards in the whole season. This game is just completely inexplicable to me, and they got blown out by Philly in similar fashion. Now they get blown out by Miami, and Jay Ajayi rushes for 200 yards. It just makes me sick.
Yeah, this is very much a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation because the Steelers, we've seen them play good this year. We've seen them hang with good teams. And then to fail against teams that really, honestly, I felt like they could beat. I felt like they should have won this game very easily. I felt like they should have won that Philadelphia game pretty easily. And here they are. So they've got to avoid this. And, if Big Ben comes back and they continue this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I think maybe my expectations for this team were too high. But, man, I just don't know what to say about it. They're like you pointed out, Mike, they are playing to the competition's level. Whatever their competition is, if it's a low-level competition or a high-level, they seem to play at that certain level.
Yeah, and it gives you hope for the team if they get in the tournament that that they can play with anybody. but it also makes you wonder if they can get into the tournament because anybody can play with them. I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland gets their first win against the Steelers. I really wouldn't.
Ooh.
Jeez. Wow, that's I mean, we have seen Cleveland play them kind of tough at times, so it's not wholly out of the realm there. But yeah, this is going to be a different team. However long Ben Roethlisberger's got to be out. The Jacksonville Jaguars win one thanks to, of all the people, Aurelius Ben with a 51-yard touchdown after he falls down, does not get touched by Tracy Porter, and then runs the rest of the way into the end zone. 17-16 win. The Jaguars actually score all their 17 points in the fourth quarter. It shows you how bad Chicago's defense is. Brian Hoyer once again goes over 300 yards. Cameron Meredith once again goes over 100 yards. And, I mean, at least that duo is working.
Yeah, it is. And, it's amazing. Just watching these two teams, both right now are not at a very high level. Jacksonville has struggled so much. And, man, for Brian Hoyer to put you in that kind of hole, I'm really concerned for Jacksonville. But they made the comeback, and they did it, and you got to give them credit for it. I mean, despite the fact that it was a Chicago defense that is kind of, let's be honest, not very good, still, Jacksonville's defense hasn't been much better either. So you got to give them credit, though, still. I feel like, Chicago, I think that they may need to stick with Brian Hoyer. He's given the best chance. It proved in this game that he was not making huge mistakes, that he was giving them a really good opportunity to win a game. I think that defense just kind of let them down in the end. And Jacksonville, once again, I mean, they found a way to win, but still not looking good doing it.
This game, to me, was fantasy delicious, if I may. Alan Hearns has been absent, really, for the first 4 games for Jacksonville, save a play here and there. This week he had 11 targets, which was 5 more than the next highest targets, including Allen Robinson. He had 74 yards on 5 catches, but Blake Bortles went back to Alan Hearns. Now, part of that could be because they were trailing big and they had to throw the ball a lot more, and they turned into the junk time Jaguars again, but actually pulled the game out in this case. But the thing that I found interesting was Chris Ivory getting 11 carries to TJ Yeldon's 6. So that's something to watch going forward. Maybe Chris Ivory is going to actually assume the reins there and have more than just a 50-50 split or less than 50-50 going forward. The other thing that was interesting to me, if Cameron Meredith is still available on your fantasy waivers, folks, pick him up. This is 2 weeks in a row where he's been getting double-digit targets and over 100 yards receiving. It seems to me like Brian Hoyer likes him. And with all the injuries that have been taking place with the Bears receiving core, I think Cameron Meredith may be legitimate moving forward. So keep an eye on him. The last thing was Jordan Howard getting 15 carries and Kadeem Carey getting 9, which was kind of interesting because Howard kind of took the reins over completely the last 2 weeks, but yielded a lot of carries to Carey this week.
Yeah, same thing with Chris Ivory getting a little bit more than the TJ Yeldon, who had been playing well. But we move along once again out of that game to discuss the Detroit Lions again winning thanks to a defensive interception at the end. And, of course, Golden Tate, Mike's favorite guy, going off finally. He was a game late. Mike was a game late on calling the Golden Tate. But Gary's guy, Case Keenum, 3 touchdowns, 321 yards. He certainly was not the reason that the Rams, he did throw the interception, but.
Yeah, but Case Keenum has really surprised people. He surprised me. I've pretty much given up on the guy. I was a big proponent of his, felt like that he was going to come in and actually do a lot of good things for the St. Louis Rams, and now all of a sudden when I kind of put down that banner and I jump off the bandwagon, he seems to come out of nowhere to surprise me here, and he is doing well. The one guy that surprised me that's not doing well is Todd Gurley. he is suffering. He's struggling, and you feel bad for the guy who had so much success. And I really thought this was a game where he could really kind of maybe have a come out party again, showcase his ability, but just did not happen in this game either. Case Keenum pretty much carried the load. And of course, Kenny Britt also making some good plays as well. I mean, so you're looking at a couple of guys.
That one-handed grab was, woof.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, but once again, this is kind of one of those, some guys in fantasy maybe coming out of the woodwork, Golden Tate, like Sean pointed out. Another guy that's really, kind of surprised because he did nothing earlier this year. The Lions are a team that we really feel like, offensively, they can do very well in the passing game. Running game, maybe not as great, but the passing game, they're very effective. And this Los Angeles defense, I thought, would give them a little bit of trouble. But at the end of the day, it was the Detroit Lions who found a way to win. Even though it was through their defense, they still kept up with Los Angeles, who has a very solid defense. So a tough-fought game for both teams, but Detroit does get the victory.
Yeah, Golden Tate can go jump off a bridge. That's how I feel about him.
Oh, man.
I'm not going to get too excited about his one game. I guarantee you he's going to be added by like 90% of fantasy teams this week because he had a game. I think I'm going to attribute this week to the manner in which the Rams tried to attack Detroit defensively by taking away Marvin Jones, which is a good tactic in theory because Marvin Jones has been their go-to guy up to this point. I think that the Matthew Stafford tried to take a lot of the shorter options, and Golden Tate made some great plays. To his credit, he did make some nice plays. The thing for me is Zach Zenner somebody that they can rely on going forward? I don't know how the extent of Theo Riddick's injury, but what's going to happen with that Detroit backfield going forward. But, in the meantime, Matthew Stafford, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He just keeps clicking right along as a top 5 fantasy option. And he has some favorable matchups down the road. I have him on my fantasy team, actually. And, for those of you who are looking for a quarterback who has some good matchups late in the season, try and trade for Stafford if somebody's willing to get rid of him.
Yeah, that's always an interesting thing to look ahead and try to plan your team based on who they play down the stretch. Of course, that matters when you get into those fantasy playoffs. But, a thing that I had actually picked the Saints here, and I was saying, I was probably one of these games I'm going to pick, and I'm going to be totally wrong. And here we go, New Orleans winning in a ridiculous fashion, very similar to the Atlanta and Seattle game where New Orleans actually had kind of had this thing in hand. Then they let the Panthers go and score 21 points in the fourth quarter, and it takes a last-second field goal of the 50-yard plus variety, and the Saints beat the Panthers 1-5 now, and 0-3 on the road. My goodness. I mean, Drew Brees had himself a day, though. 465 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jonathan Stewart comes back with a vengeance. But, man, these are the Super Bowl runners-up, and they look nothing like it.
Yeah, they did not at all. And, the most interesting thing here was it was kind of funny to say that the Saints defense was actually doing pretty well in the first half of this game and not allowing Cam Newton to do much. And they really kind of, shut things down for him for quite a bit here. I thought that was going to be the complete opposite. Carolina usually, even though their offense isn't doing so great right now, their defense usually, is what's going on. But the defense has struggled just as much. And that backfield, oof, man, they really miss Josh Norman, I guess, because they can't seem to stop anybody. Drew Brees just lit them up. And yes, you got to give credit for Cam Newton, the guys getting back into this game and making it a game. But at the same time, at times you felt like that they really never had a chance. And give credit to New Orleans, they still overcame. They could have given up once Carolina made that comeback, but they did their thing, and there they go. And this Carolina defense, I don't know, man. I almost at this point feel like that there's almost anybody can compete with them right now.
I think Brock Osweiler could throw on either one of these defenses, and not just in the fourth quarter against a prevent defense. Carolina's defense is not any better than New Orleans' defense at this point. This game, I had Jonathan Stewart and Kobe Fleener in my lineup for fantasy, and I reaped the rewards of that. If you have guys going against either of these teams, start them. It really doesn't seem to matter at this point. We've seen Carolina, they lost to Tampa Bay, for crying out loud. 1-5, Carolina really.
Cam was not playing that game.
But it doesn't matter. It's Tampa Bay. It's the defense is awful. That defense is, you don't even recognize that defense. From what they were last year to what they are this year, it's night and day. And Carolina they are a bottom 5 team right now, even with Cam Newton, because they cannot stop anyone. And I'm telling you right now, this is the kind of season where it feels like Cam Newton is going to be gone for the rest of the season at some point going forward. It really does. This just feels like one of those seasons where he's going to get knocked out for the rest of the season. And I don't want to wish that on anybody. It's just one of those gut feelings that you get from a team that has so much expectations going in and it all falls apart. It just feels like one of those kind of years.
Yeah, I mean, heck, even the the media knocked him out pretty quickly there. I mean, he jumped off that podium fast. So
yeah, we've seen that before.
Yeah,
once again, jumping off the podium. maybe the podium's just not for Cam Newton at this point. We move on to the New York Giants pulling off a heck of a comeback. Odell Beckham going off 222 yards off 2 big pass plays for Odell, and he is now best friends with that kicking net, and he gets 2 touchdowns along with those big runs. Terrence West, man, he is a beast for the Ravens. Forget Justin Forsett; he needs to be. I don't know where he's at, but Terrence West is the man right now in Baltimore. Forget that Kenneth Dixon too. Just focus on the West, and Eli Manning finally having a big game as well. Close, but man, I thought the Ravens defense was going to be a little bit better than this.
Yeah, and to talk about that Ravens defense, they've actually surprised me this year. But this game is more like the defense that I thought we would get out of them. And you got to give credit to Eli. He really came to this game. He knew that they couldn't afford another loss. They had to win this game, and he found a way to do it. And Odell Beckham, he's had an emotional roller coaster going on right now, and he goes from throwing tantrums to proposing to kicking nets. So it's definitely been a roller coaster for him as well. But it's been interesting watching these two teams. Baltimore, I felt like could do something in this game, and they did. They really felt like they were going to win it. They came out strong. You thought for a little while they were going to win it, but it was up to the Giants to prove that they are better than they've been showing, and they did. So there you go. I really felt like the end of this game kind of showed more of what the Giants can do.
Is it bad that I'm looking forward to the Giants versus the Bengals in 3 weeks? When Vontaze Burfict and Odell Beckham are going to be on the field at the same time, doesn't it feel like something nuclear could happen there? I mean,
that's if Burfict doesn't get suspended. But yeah,
I kind of the dark part of us kind of wants to see that, I think. But I mean, imagine these two guys on a whiskey drunk hanging out in a bar.
Oh man, I imagine the first thing we're going to see is Burfict go over there and rip that net apart, and then just you see Odell crying. So it's going to be crazy.
That'd be great. That would be a wonderful visual.
I literally have just that premonition about that game. It's in 3 weeks. Maybe Burfict survives a suspension or only gets a 2-week suspension. But those two guys are going to be on the field opposing each other in 3 weeks, folks. Keep an eye out because there is a little storyline that's just waiting to develop there. But for the Giants, they can't run the ball at all. It's on Eli Manning. And, Manning did not look good in the first half at all. They struggled a lot. Odell Beckham literally carried them in the fourth quarter, and he made just a fantastic play. And once he's in the open field, he's very hard to stop. It was just a matter of the Ravens giving up huge plays to Beckham. That's literally how they lost this game. And you're right about Terrence West. Once they released Forsett, we thought, well, definitely Kenneth Dixon is going to be the man, isn't he? But no, it's Terrence West, and they gave him 23 carries, so it's not like he did his damage on a short workload. He's getting the predominant looks out of this backfield, and Kenneth Dixon is just an afterthought at this point.
Yeah, surprising enough, and Justin Forsett made a home in Detroit, but I mean, right now, Kenneth Dixon's made a home on the bench because of what Terrence West is doing. So, but Mike's completely right about Eli Manning, and it's amazing to kind of see that this whole thing has taken place. But I give credit to the Baltimore defense for making things confusing, for giving the New York Giants offense fits at the beginning. They are very one-dimensional. That's going to be the biggest problem for the New York Giants right now, is the fact that they are so one-dimensional on offense. And looking at this going forward, I think Baltimore's definitely surprised me, but I'm really curious to see where the Giants go as well, because they're not exactly the team that we wanted to see at the beginning of the year, but they're still not bad. They're still they're one of those sneaky teams that'll beat you before you know it if you're not careful.
Very true. We go on to a team that we knew should have beat the other team, and that's the Buffalo Bills at home, destroying the 49ers and Colin Kaepernick looking terrible, as if he hasn't played in the amount of time that he has. He did throw a touchdown to Torrey Smith, but that's about the best you could hope for the guy. And then LaShawn McCoy goes off on his old coach, showing him, hey, you didn't believe in me? Well, I just ran for 140 yards and 3 touchdowns on you. Dude, take that. And, Bills just absolutely dismantled the 49ers. About 28 points in the last 2 quarters.
And this is not a surprise at all, like you said, Sean, because of the fact that the Buffalo Bills have been playing pretty well, and they have made sure that they've given McCoy every ability possible to do what he needs to do to be successful, and that's exactly what happened in this game. Really, the 49ers had no really response to either side of the ball. They just couldn't handle it. And Kaepernick, sure, yeah, he got a touchdown. It was nice to see for him. But outside of that, the best he looked was, in that press conference, And he wasn't talking about football. He was talking about politics. So, there you go. It's a situation where, I think all of us kind of figured what could happen here, and that's the fact that, Buffalo was going to win, and they did.
Well, speaking of Kaepernick and politics, I'm just curious if somehow the 49ers have a lead late in the game and it comes down to kneel down, the victory formation, will Kaepernick stand up as a protest?
Awesome.
I'm just curious,
That's a good point, Mike. Good point.
Yeah, but that aside, the 49ers have 2 quarterbacks, which means they don't have a quarterback. This team might be lucky to win another game going forward. And as for the Bills, this was something that Randy and I had talked about in the fantasy podcast. The Bills weren't giving the ball to McCoy enough. Suddenly, in the last 3 weeks, they're giving the ball to McCoy, and they've won 4 in a row. I don't know what's the connection. It's not hard to figure out.
Fire Greg Roman and win.
Greg Roman tells Tyrod Taylor, hand the ball to McCoy. Oh, genius. Absolutely genius.
Well, and that defense has also stepped it up as well. They have certainly been much better than they were in those first few games there. So the Tennessee Titans, who probably should have beat the Browns by a lot more than they did, but giving up to the Browns, they stayed in there. Cody Kessler should look really good in this game, throwing 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, threw some pretty, just great passes, and the guys going up there and getting it for him. Of course, a Kendall Wright touchdown where he gets up and does not get touched until he gets to the end zone, kind of wins it for the Titans. DeMarco Murray getting a touchdown, but he doesn't get the big yards that he has been getting here. So the Browns kind of focused on him, but Titans at home get it done, I guess.
Yeah, and if you're a Titans fan, you're a little bit bummed out because I think you really felt like you could win this game and probably do it very strongly with your running game being so good. But at the end of the day, gave it credit to Cleveland. They wanted to find a way to win this game, and they got pretty darn close. Kessler, very impressive. Showcased that he is, deserving to actually be the starter right now, despite the fact they really don't have anybody else anyway. But at this point, Tennessee did find the way to win. Both these teams, are not exactly, top of the market teams, but, I still feel like Tennessee has some motivation because they can still hang around. But Cleveland, I think at this point, they're just trying to get a win no matter what. You got to feel bad for them.
They've had some close calls, and they're going to beat somebody. I hope it's not the Steelers. But right now, the one thing intriguing about Cleveland is Terrell Pryor still 2 touchdowns, 75 yards receiving. He had a pass for a yard, and it was only a yard, but he was out there. And he had a run for 3 yards. He's still doing a little bit of everything, and he's literally like the 2016 version of Slash almost, if you want to go back to the Cordell Stewart days. It's almost making Josh Gordon as an afterthought as Pryor is just kind of taken over as the look at me guy on Cleveland. Even though they're 0-6, he is a diamond in the rough for that team, and it'll be really interesting to see how they use him going forward if they can ever get any continuity whatsoever out of their quarterback position.
Yeah. That's going to be a thing. I don't know, but we'll see going forward here. I think fine. The Browns are kind of fine with Cody Kessler right now. So.
Yeah, he played very well in this game. It was against Tennessee. Tennessee's defense isn't that bad. They have a legend as their defensive coordinator, so they would certainly do everything they could to throw Kessler off, and it didn't work. Just real quick on DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry 2 carries, DeMarco Murray 21 carries. Derrick Henry is just an afterthought in that backfield and has been for a few weeks now.
The only reason to have him is handcuff situation, really, at this point.
Yeah, basically. And, which once again surprises me DeMarco Murray's done great. That's why they're giving him the ball. They're feeding him. But I really felt like they were going to make this a dual back system because Henry had some success early in preseason and all that. But, hey, you got to give credit to where it's due. They won the game, and DeMarco Murray helped them do it. So they didn't need Henry.
Well, speaking of running backs helping them do it, the on and off again, Matt Jones shows up in this game against the Eagles. He gets over 100 yards, 135 to be exact, and a touchdown. Very much like when they won, not the last game, but the one previous to that. Matt Jones went off. Kirk Cousins actually did pretty well in this game as well. The Eagles were able to sort of keep it close, so it was a close game throughout. They really didn't get too much of a lead on each other. And then I think this was another defensive mistake, if I'm not wrong, by Carson Wentz here. Yeah, well, it wasn't a defensive mistake. They sacked him, and that's how the Redskins win. I think he got sacked about 5 times during the game as well. So Redskins were on it with Carson Wentz, and that's how you do it. The Redskins now 4 in a row on wins.
Yes, and this has been something that I think a lot of Redskins fans were going to expect. I think they felt like that they had this ability on offense to get hot, to show teams what they could do, and early in the season they just weren't doing that. Now, it's the defense is really the picture-perfect thing here because they got so much pressure on Carson Wentz. It disrupted him all game long. That helped their offense, if you ask me. I think that gave them confidence that they didn't have to worry so much. Not only did it take pressure off Cousins, but it took a lot of pressure off of the running game. And Matt Jones, wow, went from fantasy dead to fantasy wow. So I'm surprised to, actually say that for once. I'm looking at this Eagles team as, still a good team, but I think they faced a Redskins team that was motivated, that was hot. And I still have my concerns about the Eagles, but I don't think they're terrible. I just think that this day, Carson Wentz kind of got made to be what he is, and that's a rookie. It looked just like a rookie quarterback here. So if you're an Eagles fan, I wouldn't be just freaking out or anything. But sometimes in these rivalry games, this is going to happen.
The NFL's so screwy. It really is. I mean, Carson Wentz was a media darling for 4 weeks. He could do no wrong. Then they come in this game, and they don't get an offensive touchdown in the game. Their touchdowns were on a defensive interception return for a touchdown and a kickoff return, which was the first kickoff return of the season for any team. Took till week 6 for that to take place, so that's an interesting little nugget there.
That means that the rules that they're setting in place is making Goodell happy.
Yeah, well, that touchback, that extra 5 yards is worth it. Although teams like New England are taking advantage of it and telling their kickers to kick it to the goal line, and they're actually, I mean, that's the thing about the Patriots. They literally take every little edge they can get, and that's why a lot of people hate them, because some of those edges are considered to be against the rules. Whatever those rules may be, the NFL seems to change them every year, but whatever. But yeah, that was the first kick return for a touchdown. They didn't score an offensive touchdown in this game at all, and they ran 43 plays to Washington's 67. This game shouldn't have been as close as it was. The Redskins literally dominated Philadelphia for the majority of this game. They let them hang around by a special teams play and a defensive score. But I am a little concerned about Carson Wentz, because I agree with Gary. He looked like a rookie. And Washington's defense has been a sieve up until this game. I would have some concerns if I'm Philadelphia with 2 consecutive losses now and not being able to put up an offensive touchdown against a questionable Redskin defense.
I mean, this is the divisional game, though. So, they're going to prepare for the other team harder than you normally would. You know each other more. I think somebody obviously paid attention and said, okay, we want people to stop talking about Carson Wentz. So we're going to pop him in the mouth. We're going to be constantly bring pressure, see if this offensive line can handle it. And they obviously couldn't, because they're missing key players. And then on the offensive side, Kirk Cousins and Matt Jones do what they do, and you get this. So, I think this is a great game plan by the Redskins, give them that credit, and you do what you do. And talking about the last NFC East team we haven't talked about, boy, this was not what I was expecting. I think Gary or any other Cowboy or Packer fan, for that matter, when this big 425 matchup happened on Fox. Brett Favre's there to get his name put up in the Ring of Honor, and the Packers pull up a stinker, as the offense could not get moving at all on that Cowboys defense. Aaron Rodgers just overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys, just not the same Aaron Rodgers. And then, of course, Ezekiel Elliott just running it at the Packers at will. And this is the number 1 rush defense in the entire league. And the Cowboys just said, you know what? Hey, this is what we do. Try to stop it. And they couldn't. And Dak Prescott does throw his first interception. He has a fumble again. But he still looked good. And he still, that big drive at the end of the first half was amazing. And you got to give Dak credit for still playing well here. 5-1. Going to the bye, man, this is a big conundrum for the Cowboys as far as what you do at QB.
And, if you're asking fans around the league, what team would be 1-5 and which one would be 5-1, and you'd put Carolina and Dallas, I think which one we'd all pick, right? Carolina would be 5-1. And this is totally this is the parity that the NFL wants, right? And here you go. And I think that in this game, it was a big game. It was a big game for both teams, because really, let's be honest, Minnesota is really giving Green Bay a run for their money, something that I don't think they ever expected to happen. And now they're, on the outside looking in and trying to figure out how to win games now. And that's a lot of pressure for Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what's wrong with him. He obviously helped this Dallas Cowboy team. Now, you got to give credit to the Dallas defense. They did some good things, but man, I mean, honestly, if you watch that game film, Aaron Rodgers missed 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how many touchdowns that he should have had. He just overthrew receivers. It was just not pretty. So there's something going on with him. I don't know what that is. Eddie Lacy tried his best to help this team, but with a bum ankle, he couldn't be as effective as I think he needed to be. Dak Prescott, many quarterbacks in this league can't go into Green Bay and look as good as he did. He really didn't worry about the atmosphere. He didn't care where he was. He could have been in the middle of a grocery store parking lot, and he did his job. So the two rookies for Dallas are still continuing to impress people. Ezekiel Elliott, number one rushing guy in this league right now. He's a top rusher. And, if he keeps on the pace he is, Dickerson may want to look over his shoulder. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying if he keeps at that pace, because right now at this point, it's getting serious.
Well, the interesting thing to me, people keep saying that, Rodgers hasn't looked like himself. He hasn't looked like himself since 2014. That's what people seem to be overlooking. He struggled again this week in a game where they couldn't run the ball. Eddie Lacy, 3.8 yards a carry. Eddie Lacy and Aaron Rodgers right now might be two of the most overrated fantasy players in fantasy football. And they have been for a while now. Now, that's not to say that they don't have talent. We know they're capable of playing well. They just haven't. For whatever reason, Rodgers last season was not himself, and Lacy was an afterthought last year. And he hasn't, all the talk about Lacy coming into this season, how he trimmed down and this and that. He has not been the back that they were hoping to get, that they saw 2 years ago. And this team is flawed. They are a flawed team. They had no business getting blown out by Dallas, which is basically what happened. They turned the ball over 4 times. And it begs the question, I'm not a Cowboys fan, obviously, and I know both of you are. I got to ask this question. If Tony Romo is starting for the Cowboys, does the Cowboys defense still play as well as it has?
It's kind of a funny thing, and I would usually say no. But in this case, this team is very reminiscent of the 2014 Dallas Cowboys, where DeMarco Murray was just basically blowing and going through teams. And he helped, along with Tony Romo. Tony Romo had an excellent year passing that year. And that's what really helped that defense, because if you look at the defense, if you go back and look at the names on that Dallas Cowboy defense, half of those guys were playing at Walmart before they moved on to play in the NFL for the Cowboys, because they were so far in trouble on defense. And that's no joke. These guys were really sitting on their couch, and the Cowboys said, "Hey, do you have 5 minutes? We need you." So that's the way it kind of worked out. And this year, it kind of same way. Lots of injuries. If you want to go to the list of injuries, we can. But it's just, I feel like Romo is still a competitor. I know people give him a hard time. Dak Prescott, though, to me, he's doing too good of a job right now, and I think that he is helping this defense. But I don't.
But that's the difference, though. Is last year the same 2 players were out. What did the Cowboys do? They couldn't score for the life of themselves. The defense was holding stuff together even though they couldn't score. And then now look what happens when you actually give the defense a lead. And then they don't have to be on the field as much, because the team takes 7 minutes, 8 minutes sometimes to run a drive. That's what you're supposed to do. This defense is built to work with a lead. And when they work with a lead, they're able to go out there and do what they do. And they're not, the number 1 defense in the league or anything like that, but they're efficient. They work within their context. They have Sean Lee running around. Morris Claiborne has been fantastic this year. But it really comes down to, what does Dak Prescott do for that team? What does Ezekiel Elliott do for that team? What does that offensive line do, pushing people around? And Dak Prescott's able to find everybody. Bryce Butler has been fantastic for the little bit that he does get to catch the ball, which is usually touchdowns. So, give the team credit.
I'm impressed with Cole Beasley. to be honest. I mean, he literally came from virtually out of nowhere. I mean, we knew he was kind of the third guy and the slot guy, but he has stepped up huge since Des Bryant has been gone. 2 touchdowns this week, 6 catches on 6 targets. He doesn't drop the ball. I mean, that's very impressive to me. But I got to ask you guys this question. Two questions. The first one isn't quite as obvious. The second one, I'm sure you probably know what the question's going to be. But the first one is, would the Cowboys be 5-1 if Romo was playing?
I'll let Sean, you go first because I have my opinion on this.
This is a weird. I hate this kind of question because you don't really know. The team is obviously rallying around Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. I think obviously Romo doesn't change much as far as what Elliott's going to do. I think what Romo does bring is that Romo makes mistakes. Romo throws the ball in places where it doesn't need to be thrown. There was obvious times where I'm going, okay, Dak's going to throw it to this guy. No, he doesn't. He turns around, he runs the other way and throws it to the guy that's in the safe zone or check down or Witten or something. That's the main difference for me. Romo would have probably cost us one of these games by now because he would have tried to force it somewhere, force it to Dez or throw something, and he puts too much on it and it sails over and it gets intercepted. I'm not trying to hate on Romo because I love him, but it's the truth of the matter. The guy is a gunslinger, and you're going to live and die by that.
Me and Sean disagree on this. I think they're 6-0 with Romo, and that's because Romo knows the New York Giants backwards and forwards, and he knows how to beat them. And I feel like that first game would have been a victory. They wouldn't have gotten that situation that they got put in at the end of the game. I think the rest of these
Romo
teams.
Romo also has issues with the Packers, so
he does. I agree. But, put him in the same situation with Aaron Rodgers playing like he's lost. I think Romo takes advantage of that. Romo hasn't had the luxury of playing Aaron Rodgers when he's not lost. But saying all that, I just feel like, Dak Prescott does do what Sean's saying. It does play it safer. But I still feel like Tony Romo, that's a well-oiled machine when he's in there. So I think that's why I still would say they're 6-0. I don't know. That's just the way I feel about it, though.
All right. Well, my 2 cents is Dak Prescott is a completely different quarterback than Tony Romo, as Sean said. And with that offensive line being so solid, it allows them to run the ball almost at will against just about anybody, and it masks any issues that Dak Prescott might have because they're able to run more play action, they're able to run more bootleg and roll out passes, playing off of the run ability. Obviously, Tony Romo is more of a pocket passer, and I think he's a more efficient passer as a whole. But the question is now, if Romo's healthy in 2 weeks, does he get his job back? And should he?
I don't feel like he should get his job back right now. And I know it's weird because I definitely am a big Romo supporter, but I'm also a huge Dak Prescott supporter. I've been supporting this guy ever since last year when he played for Mississippi State. I've loved this guy. Ask Randy. I gushed about Prescott in college, and I prayed to the Lord above that my team would get him, and they finally did. They got them a good quarterback. So I love both these guys pretty much equally. But it's the Dak Prescott and the chemistry and the fact that this team is behind him. You can't break up that chemistry. I'm hearing NFL quarterbacks, legends, guys in the Hall of Fame saying the same thing. Don't break the chemistry if you got it. It's stupid if you do. I know Romo may not deserve to lose his job, but it has happened year in and year out for other teams. And hey, Romo did it to Drew Bledsoe. Maybe it's his time.
Yeah, so did Tom Brady.
Yep, you're exactly right.
For Drew Bledsoe, but it sucks because Romo's really not done anything to lose his job other than get hurt, and that's the thing. Is Dak Prescott's been durable. He goes out there and he's safe with the football, as I already mentioned, and what Gary said is the number one thing. It's about chemistry. It's about what he brings to that team. That team is clearly we want Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's taken us this far. Let's see how much farther he takes us. Let's see how much farther. Because I outlined it, I think, on the fantasy podcast or whatever, but it cannot be overstated how much a running quarterback helps when you're running that read option and you can decide, I'm going to give it to one of the best running backs in the league, or I'm going to have to watch and see if Dak Prescott takes off. And if he takes off and he runs, you got to be careful with that. Or if he decides to fake one of those bootlegs and you think that they gave it to Elliott and Prescott's the one that has it, he can go and score on a touchdown or whatever. He's not the passer Romo is. Obviously not. And obviously, I'm sure Dez, if you ask him, he might want Romo in there because that means Dez's stats are better and whatever. But I think even Dez will tell you right now we're winning. And winning is what matters at the end of the day. And until the Cowboys go on some kind of losing streak or Prescott just plays really badly, I don't know that you can take him out right now. You got the Eagles next. Let's see what happens there.
Here's my take. I feel like Prescott should keep playing over Tony Romo. And here's why. And this is something I haven't read anywhere, I haven't heard anywhere, but this is something that I thought about. And the reason why I think Prescott should continue to start is if Romo comes back and plays, there's a better than average chance that he gets hurt. Can we agree on that?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So if Prescott, who is young and healthy, continues to start, now you have Tony Romo in the hole if something should happen to Prescott. Whereas if Tony Romo comes in and gets hurt, you don't have a backup quarterback again. So why not start the healthy guy who's winning and keep everything the way it's going and have Romo in the hole instead of losing him for the rest of the season and only having Prescott? I know that's kind of a different way to look at things, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I think
wrong there.
No, Troy Aikman agrees with you because I remember during that broadcast, Troy Aikman saying Dak Prescott needs to keep his role as a starting quarterback, but somewhere down the line they will probably need Tony Romo, and I think he's agreeing with you totally.
Yeah, that's that same concept you just said. It's Romo is a wonderful backup quarterback that is obviously a starter, and we'll have to cross that bridge when you come to it next year, if Dak is the one that stays. But even then, like Romo might feel like his job is threatened and decide next year, okay, well maybe I need to go somewhere else. But they do need to keep it the same because you don't know what could happen with Prescott. If he goes down, then you got Romo. If what you said, Mike, is just wonderful. That just makes so much sense. Hopefully for the playoffs, that's not the. But like getting you some regular season wins, I don't think I have a problem with Romo doing that for a couple games or whatever.
Yeah, I just think it's nice to be able to keep your ace in the hole instead of playing it up front and then being back to only the one guy when we all agree that Romo is likely to get hurt again. And he's got his back is it's messed up for lack of
all it takes is the wrong kind of hit and he falls on it, and there you go again.
Yeah, and you might be able to take a chance on Romo sitting for the next 4 or 5 weeks, having that back get even stronger, and maybe being durable enough. And you've got Romo for the playoffs if needed. So why not keep rolling with Prescott? He's winning games. He's young. He's not likely to get hurt, and that means that you're protecting Romo in a situation where it's not hurting your team. But one last question here. Next season, Game 1, where is Tony Romo? Is he in the broadcast booth? Is he golfing? Is he starting for the Dallas Cowboys? Is he backing up for the Dallas Cowboys? Or is he playing for somebody else? What do you guys think?
That is a really tough question. And it's I'll say it this way. Let's just take it from here where we're at right now. If this is a success that the Dallas Cowboys are going to have with Dak Prescott, I think the Cowboys are going to have to make a tough decision, but it's going to have to be a team decision. And that team decision is going to have to be he'll let Tony Romo go, and I think Romo still believes in himself, and he'll be playing for another team next year. I don't know who that would be, but I think he'll be playing for another team, and Dak Prescott will be this solid starter for the Dallas Cowboys.
I think Jerry Jones does something to convince Romo to stay because he has been trying forever. Ever since we had it was really a thing last year, but he has been trying to have a backup quarterback you can rely on. I think he finds some way to convince Romo to stay, back up Dak Prescott, give him the knowledge, whatever it is that, he feels is necessary. And then when that contract is out after, this next year, then you let Romo go and decide if Romo wants to keep playing or if he wants to quit. But
what if
go ahead.
What if somebody offers like a number one for him?
Well, that's different. If somebody offers a number one, then I think if you're Jerry Jones, you have to take it. But if somebody comes in offering anything other than a number two, I think you don't even bother with it, and you just say, look, this is our backup quarterback, and I don't know that there's too many other backup quarterbacks in the league that I'd want other than – there's none other than Tony Romo right now. But just talking about starters, I mean, there's still guys I'd want Tony Romo over,
It's definitely a luxury compared to what you've had to deal with over the last few seasons of just complete ineptitude at the backup quarterback position and just having nobody. I mean, Prescott is literally a godsend to Texas.
Yeah.
God bless Texas. It finally happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't give too much of a blessing to Brock Osweiler, but at least it gave it to the Prescott. So I'm sorry. I know we've been taking digs at Osweiler like the whole show, but whatever. Maybe he needs to do better. Anyway, that's going to be it for our Football to the Max Week 6 review edition. We'll be back on the Friday morning part with the Week 7 preview. And, make sure you check out WTM Network for all the other shows that we have. And go to WTMNet.com. We just posted the Top 25 poll for College Football Week 7. Some of the top teams don't move much, but at least, it'll be fun to look in there and see if some teams debut or where some teams are in our rankings there. Oh, I almost forgot before we get out of here. Who would you have for a player of the week? Lots of choices here.
Ooh, I'm going to go LaShawn McCoy. I think he had an excellent week.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with that. I am going to say, and I did not remember that this was part of your guys's your deal here, but it is what it is. I will take Odell Beckham Jr. as my player of the week with just a huge play, really, to win that game for him and over 200 yards receiving.
You know what? From all the crap that Odell Beckham's taken, I think for him to show up big in this game and help his team win almost single-handedly, I think that kind of deserves some props there.
All right. Well, looks like Odell Beckham is our MVP for this week, man. And, just to let everybody know, if you want to go ahead and put in money, we're gambling and betting on the fact that, this divorce with that net may come sooner than later, or do you think it's going to last a lifetime?
I just hope.
Let's just talk about this season for the net.
I just hope there's no sideline domestic abuse issues. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh man, Odell Beckham suspended.
There's going to be people making that parallel too. It's so sad. But
that's why we get there first.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So that's going to do it for this show, and we will see you on the Week 7 preview, guys.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.